Good morning. I'm Thaddeus Dawson with the 10,000 Black Appraisers and 10,000 Minority Appraisers Foundation. We're here at the Clayton County Library today with our Outside the Barn series. I know every week I say that I'm really excited and we have some special guests. So I am really excited and we do have some special guests. Today we're going to talk about urban agriculture, aquaponics, hydroponics, and water farming. We have Mitchell Davis of Pondco, and he's also designed Andrew Young Forever Young Foundation aquaponics facility here in Clayton County. I'll let you tell him all about himself in a few minutes. And to my right, we have biologist Dr. Myron Williams. He's done a lot of research in biology in different fields. And so we'll let him tell you all about himself here in a few minutes. I'd like to thank and acknowledge the Clayton County Library, its director, Scott Parham. Thank you, Scott, for all of your support. Ms. Belinda Ellerby and Ms. Kim Jones. Our refreshments and our sponsor, the #1 chef in Georgia, Chef Tiffany. And then we have Lady with a Hammer, Cascade Fence Company, Miss Evangeline Anderson as well. We're going to start today by rolling a 5-minute clip of the Andrew Young Forever Young Foundation groundbreaking. Let me start that.
Ambassador Andrew Young and the Andrew Young Foundation joined with Forever Young Aquaponics and Clayton County officials in a groundbreaking that promises to revolutionize sustainable farming and provide fresh, healthy food for our communities in the soon-to-be Forever Young Aquaponics Farm. This ambitious 70,000 square foot facility has been a dream of Atlanta's Ambassador Andrew Young, a man whose vision has always been to feed the hungry in a sustainable, environmentally friendly way.
That's a big dream for these 12 acres. But when I looked in my Bible and it said, if you want to get to heaven, you got to feed the hungry. So that's enough. Stop right there. Many will heal the sick. Many will do other things. But creating a community where people, in spite of the diversity of their backgrounds, come together and are able to provide food and water and life and education. And all of this is a part, I think, of the way I see God's plan.
The Andrew J. Young Foundation has always been at the forefront of addressing social issues.
Ambassador Young and I started on this journey several years ago with a simple idea on how to feed the hungry. It is going to be the most technologically sophisticated farm in the world, and we are bringing the best and the brightest of the talent from all over the world. We have Murray Hallam from Australia, we have Arvind Venkat from Canada, who has built multiple farms which are all profitable, which are feeding a lot of people around the world. On this farm, we will start with 1 acre, and 1 acre farm will produce about 1,500 to 2,000 pounds of fresh and organic greens and vegetables every day. And it will produce about 1 ton of fish every week. And best of all, there is zero discharge in the environment. It will use only 10% of water that is used in conventional agriculture, and it will use only 20% of energy that is used in conventional agriculture. We'll have multiple opportunities for internships, employment. So we are really happy about this project coming to Clayton County. It's only 10 minutes from the airport. And the future looks bright.
Forever Young's Rawson Haverty explains the benefits of this cutting-edge technology in farming.
The ecosystem of aquaponics is one of the most efficient in the world. The water sources that are used that come from the fish waste are recycled, and the only really loss of water is evaporation. So we protect most of the water, so it's the best and most efficient way to grow food in terms of water and energy sustainability. The other challenge is the global economy is challenge with traditional farming that takes a lot more land, more labor, more pesticides. So this alternatively is a safer, better way to grow food. And it also allows you to localize your distribution, so you don't have to export food all over the world. That's our vision, is to be able to not only develop this farm, but develop smaller farms and smaller ecosystems locally in different communities around the United States and potentially around the world.
This project is not just about innovation in farming. It's also about economic development and community growth.
This means the world to us. This was a vacant home, a vacant estate. It is now going to be turned and put into productive use and create everything from utilities to water usage to jobs and revenue. And we couldn't be more excited to welcome this project and more like it.
From job creation to educational programs and community engagement, the Forever Young Aquaponics Farm will be a catalyst for positive change.
But now I've learned that the future can happen in the midst of all of our struggles and all of our difficulties. And so I've learned to dream for that future and about that future.
With construction already underway, the Forever Young Aquaponics Farm is set to become a model for innovation and a beacon of hope for food security and environmental sustainability.
So that was a little bit of history about the Andrew Young, Forever Young Foundation and Aquaponics facility. That voice that you heard, we're blessed to have him here with us today. That's Rick Clear, our videographer and podcast producer. I want to just say a special shout out and thank you to him, as well as our Chief Operating Officer, Anita Perez. They make all of these things happen that we're doing and help to bring my visions to life. I'm really thankful and grateful to have Mitchell and Myron here, the two M's. So I'm going to go ahead. One of the things that Andrew Young talked about in dreaming and trying to provide food security. One of our goals when we first started this mission was to close the wealth gap through accurate valuations. We've since shifted our focus. One of my economist friends, Dr. William Michael Cunningham, he likes to tell me that it'll take 500 years for us to close the wealth gap. I don't think I'm going to see that, but I have realized that we can close the poverty gap. That's $200 billion. And if we look at the undervaluation of real estate for black people, that's $400 billion. That's $200 billion in real estate, $100 billion for the black farmers, and then there's another $100 billion in heirs property. So I believe that if we can shift our focus to closing the poverty gap, because it's kind of hard to focus on the wealth gap when eggs cost $1 a piece. What we need to do is increase food security. So we've been doing a lot of work with farming, and I'm always looking at how to increase value. Like that house that the facility is being built on was at the end of its useful life, and now it's being reconverted to a new highest and best use. So the goal is to increase the quality of life, and we can do that by increasing and improving food security. So we're doing a lot of work with farmers across the Black Belt, and I'm very proud of that work. And as a part of that work, as they were saying that aquaponics and hydroponics is another way to efficiently produce food. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mitchell. Mitchell designed the Andrew Young, Forever Young aquaponics facility, and he's well-versed. He's an architect, and I'm going to let you go ahead, Mitchell.
Thanks, Thaddeus. My name is Mitchell Davis. I'm an architect with Pond & Company. We're a full-service architecture and engineering firm. We've been around 60 years as of this year. So to Thaddeus's point, we were honored and had the opportunity to work with the foundation in the design and execution of this project. We were assisted, really the leader of the design efforts was a group called Water Farmers. They're an international expert in aquaponics facilities, but this is the first facility of its type in an urban setting in the U.S. So that's why we were involved in figuring out ways and strategies to work with planning and zoning and some of the other challenges to bring this project to life.
Thank you, Mitchell. And to my right, Dr. Myron Williams. Myron is a biologist. I'll just let you tell him about. He's got like 5 PhDs, 10 master's degrees, and a whole bunch of other
Okay,
stuff.
first of all, I only have two degrees, but I'm a professor of chemistry at Clark Atlanta University. In the past couple of years, I've been working with the HBCU Green Fund. I met Thaddeus going on 40 years now. We were
I'm
both,
not that old.
teenagers at the time, right?
Yeah.
That's the story. We're sticking with it. But I've spent most of my career as a basic research scientist in microbiology and biochemistry. But in the past few years, realized that number one, climate change is real, and two, would like my work to go beyond publications stored in a library somewhere and wanting to actually impact the world. So I've always had interest in sort of agriculture, and I'm from the island of Bermuda, so I've always thought about natural resources and water. So I actually came here to learn, and Thaddeus sort of pulled me onto the panel. But among other things, we're working with Truly Living Well Center for Urban Agriculture in Atlanta. It's a urban farm near the Atlanta University Center, trying to, again, promote among our university students and in both engagement with the community and urban farming, the ability of people to provide their own food, to get better quality food and lower cost food. And another project that I've been focusing on is sort of what I refer to as a piece of the circular materials economy, where we use waste to generate resources as energy and agriculture. And we have a biogas digester set up at Truly Living Well. So there's a few different things that I'm involved with. And again, I'm still hoping to learn and engage and share whatever I can here today.
And so from there, I'd like Mitchell to talk about the waste that's produced from the fish at the aquaponics facility. What are you doing with that waste, Mitchell?
Well, there's really no other way to say it. Everybody does their business, the fish do their business, and so we're taking that waste product, filtering out some of the impurities, some of the eggs, some of the other things that are part of that, adding some things to it, some natural things to it, and then injecting that into the water pools, where in this case, baby greens, baby spinach, baby kale, baby lettuce will be grown. So they sit on rafts about this size at the head of the pools, and then over the course of 20 to 30 days, they have their journey down the lazy river, and then at the end of that, they go into a water channel and they're harvested. So we're effectively harvesting, or I should say, we've got a 20 to 30 day growth cycle where you would normally have a 6-month cycle in a traditional dirt farm. So not only are we more efficient, we're much more profitable, and that growth cycle is shortened and it's controlled. So, but yeah, the central to all of that is this closed loop system, using the fish and their fish product, their byproduct, as the fertilizer source, and then as a kind of a nice to have, we're able to harvest those fish. As Gaurav said in the video, we're able to harvest those fish, so it's really profitable all around.
How much more productive is farming that way as opposed to farming in the dirt?
So, for example, let's call this a 3x6 plot. If you were growing spinach, you'd be able to get about 18 plants in this area. In our facility, this same area will have between 180.
Mitchell, can you speak up? They can't hear you.
It'll have between 180 and 200 plants in that same region. So it's about 10 times more efficient in the same surface area.
With that also, what about the power usage to grow with aquaponics as opposed to growing traditionally?
It's a great question, and I'll make 2 points. So we are set up for
Speak up a little bit. We can get a microphone.
Okay. We're set up for solar energy on this facility. We're still working through some of those mechanics in terms of how we actually secure and implement some of those solar panels. But we're set up for it, and we're anticipating that we will be solar powered in the future. That said, these facilities, and I think Gar have touched on it, are about 80% more efficient, or use 20% of the normal sort of fossil fuels and resources that would be required with traditional agriculture. So we're much more profitable. We're much more conservative when it comes to resources, and to mention not only power, but also water. So it's using about 8 to 10% of what a normal system would use in terms of water consumption.
With the solar power, there has always been a concern about the consistency in the power and the breaks. Now, do you have any concern about the solar power and the breakdown in the consistency of the power?
Well, I would say if the sun doesn't come out, we've got bigger problems to solve. But no doubt, there's a 24-hour cycle. I mean, these are living things, so they do require 24 hours of attention. So I think, to answer your question directly, solar will be able to assist in terms of the overall power need for the facility. It won't be able to satisfy 100% of the power requirements. So we're looking at it to augment some of the systems and help reduce that power load a little further. There are some emerging technologies with capacitors and batteries and other storage mechanisms that can help assist that. But in terms of being 100% solar, I don't know that we're there yet, and I don't know that the technology is there yet.
Myron, is there anything that's going to be lost from a biological standpoint, producing this way with the aquaponics as opposed to out of the dirt?
I know there's a lot of sort of debate around this, and most of it is not very well informed. The nutritional value of any living thing, be it a fish, an animal, a plant, if that thing was able to live and grow and thrive, it has essentially the same nutritional value in terms of the basic, carbohydrates, protein, our biological needs. Now, there are things called micronutrients, like vitamins and minerals, that may change very, very slightly. But usually anything that has been alive has these things in it. The concern in many cases in terms of how one farms has to do with contaminants and potential toxins and so forth, which are going to be present at very, very low levels if they're there. But you have arsenic in soils. If on the assumption that this is a well-controlled system where you're actually monitoring, and I'm actually curious to know what kind of monitoring you're looking at, the flow of the solution, that the nutrient solution for the fish and for the plants, then you can in sort of real time hopefully know if there's any lead. There shouldn't be, but it depends on the source of your feed and the source of your water. I love the idea that it's more conservative of both space and water and energy, but my concern has more to do with the upfront capital cost to set up the system, to buy the materials and so forth. And I've been really interested and a big proponent of really small scale. The biogas project I'm working on is household scale rather than industrial scale. There's clearly economies of scale. As you increase the size of something, then the investment cost is smaller relative to the yield. And I'm curious about the size of the systems. How small can you get, or how large does it have to be to become economically viable?
That's a great question. I'll say this: my first exposure to these systems are really at the household, sort of the backyard scale. In in the Andrew Young Foundation, there is an aquaponics system that could fit on this table. So it's effectively a proof of concept. So the scale is not limited, so to speak. There are modules and there are relationships that have to scale with them, but effectively it could sit on a tabletop or it could occupy 1,000 acres and anything and everything in between. But I would agree with you that the limiting factor and one of the challenges and one of the oppositions to this as a long-term sustainable method to address food security is the capital expenditures, the upfront costs. So, you know, our efforts involved the equipment, the ground, the facilities. Every bit of that takes capital resources to implement. So I would be remiss and I would be sticking my head in the sand if I didn't agree with you. So I think that there are ways to build technologies, build exposure, build interest, and build excitement that will help bring some of those costs down so that it is more approachable for every person in the world to be able to implement this. But I'll say this, most of the facilities that the team that we're partnered with have done are not in the U.S., or not in North America, actually. They are in Oman, they're in South Korea, they're in India. So these are not necessarily capital-rich countries, and so they've had to adapt and had to be more conservative with their natural resources. They're in urban settings, so they don't have as much land as we have. So there are, I would say, reasons, I might call them excuses, as to why we haven't adopted some of these advanced technologies in the farming space until now. But I think we're starting to see, and I would agree, in terms of climate change and some of the other resource constraints, eggs costing $1. If they're $1, I need to know where you got them, because that's cheap. But where we can go with this, I think, is unlimited. But there are certain things that we got to figure out in order to get there.
I think this is a really good start, and the way I always look at, again, is about highest and best use and how do we maximize the real estate and the land value. And if you're able to produce your own food in your own community, and I think with that method of farming, you can, with the regenerative ability, you can probably produce more food than you're able to eat, therefore giving you the ability to provide fresh farm to table for your neighbors and people in your community at an affordable cost, therefore preventing food deserts. So that as a resource and a combination is kind of the way that we are looking at it. And I love the fact that you talked about you could put that sort of thing on a table. So it's something that everybody can do and everybody can participate in. And there's no size, and the majority of the farms are institutional and large in scale. And in that production, everything is highly mechanized, therefore making the opportunities not as available for smaller farmers. And I think this gives the smaller farmer the opportunity and ability to be able to scale and impact the community from a cooperative standpoint. And again, food scarcity is real, and our health is at risk because of the lack of fruits and vegetables that are available or that we consume with a nutritional value. And historically, fish has been used as a fertilizer in other cultures in order to fertilize the land to be able to use. And I'd like for you to speak a little bit about that, Myron, and then we'll come back to you, Mitchell.
Okay. Well, actually, I'm going to divert a little bit from that focus.
No divert. You got to stick right on the topic here.
Well,
no, I'm just...
Okay, again, in terms of scale, well, first of all, I want to discuss the difference between hydroponics and aquaponics.
Please.
Hydroponics is, to me, a much simpler kind of system. Mm-hmm. The idea is it's farming or without the use of soil. So it's growing plants using some kind of liquid nutrient solution that's provided to clay or some kind of medium that they're held in. I actually purchased a a simple system from a Chinese company. It was about $100. Just consisted of several PVC pipes with holes in them.
Was that before or after the tariff?
Long before.
That's right.
So yeah, it could be what? It's 145%. That would be 250, something like
There
that.
tariffs?
So well, but you know, like, I wanted something simple that someone with some basic mechanical skills could duplicate, right? So I've had it for a number of years. Been sort of trying to run it and figure out how to make it run. It comes with a pump that needs a continuous supply of electricity. So I thought I was being clever. I put a barrel up top so the pump would sort of pump up to there and then turn off. You know, so it's timed, and I've been trying to find a battery to be able to do that. Haven't really succeeded. I'm not very handy. But how many of you have little garden plots in your backyard? And, you know, again, depending upon size, to get to the scale issue, I think most of us will go and spend some money on plants in the beginning of the year, or beginning of the summer, the spring, you know, maybe fertilizer, whatever else. And usually the value of what we harvest is not equal to the inputs that we put in, but we feel good about it, et cetera, et cetera. At least that's my case with my little hydroponic system. Anyway, so hydroponics is basically just growing plants where you have to supply the nutrients, and you can purchase it or find other ways to get it. Aquaponics combines that with the growth of fish in vats. So the nutrients for the plants are supplied by the waste matter from the fish. I'm not certain what the source of the feed for the fish is, but that's an input that one would have to put in.
That's right.
And, you know, because you're trying to keep two different kinds of living systems going, again, I assume that it's a bit more complicated to manage and to make work. But again, I'd be really interested in hearing, you know, whatever sort of systems are available for purchase,
Sure.
what they would cost, what it takes to think about running them.
Sure.
Could you remind me of the question again?
I just want to ask Mitchell a quick question. The feed of the fish, so we're talking about organic. What are the fish eating before they produce the waste that you're using to fertilize?
So that's a great question, and I do want to at least disclaim that where I may get out of my lane or where my expertise may not extend, I'll make a little note of that. So we were talking yesterday at UGA, had a aquaculture conference. So it was a group of aquaculture specialists, anything from oysters to clams and fish, both coastal and inland, catfish, tilapia, anything and everything in between. So that was a hot topic yesterday. And so, for example, one farmer was saying that, you know, the bag of feed that he used to buy that was $8 is now $24 or $26. So the input for the fish is no doubt a concern, both in terms of cost, but also in terms of its sourcing and its components. So I think, and I would be remiss if I said, you know, anything to the contrary, but I know that we're working, or Water Farmers is working to address and source sustainable non-soy-based feed, because the same effect that soy has on our body with regards to synthetic estrogens and some of the other things can do the same thing to fish. So we're going to, you know, just like any system, junk in, junk out. So we're going to make sure that we're putting quality feed into the fish and then ultimately producing quality products downstream.
So one of my goals in this, in working with the farmers, and because there is a housing shortage and affordability, I believe that we can do rural mixed-use developments where we can have farming along with housing and make some sort of affordability with the housing utilizing the cooperative model. And just like your normal HOA fees, you can utilize the HOA fees in order to pay the farm manager to produce fresh farm to table, as well as livestock, as well as getting back to communal living. one of the things that I think as people, we have to overcome the trauma of slavery to feel like it's okay to get back to the farm. And as I've been able to travel the country to go to these different areas, especially with the 1890 land-grant colleges and the HBCUs, there's an abundance of land. There's just opportunities that I'm trying to get Mitchell to design these places for me so we can have a proof of concept in order to be able to get this done. We do have something kind of like that here at Serenbe, which is really nice. And again, we've been doing a lot of work in the affordable space, how to appraise land trust properties to make them more affordable, housing more affordable. And in the cooperative model, it depends on, as we travel the country, the different land trust models. I haven't really seen any that really are a really strong tool in order wealth building and wealth creation. It's more of a position of rent control, but there are different ways that you can do it through shared tenancy, where you could do mark to market from the leasehold to the lease fee. So this could be a very viable concept. So that's just something that I'm working with. But also in that, it comes back to food scarcity, utilizing the aquaponics and the farming piece. So what do you think about what Mitchell was talking about as far as the feed that the fish are using, and how is that going to affect the end user, which would be humans, as far as the soy and how it's digested in our systems?
Yeah, so again, we have a tendency to separate industries and separate production. So I don't know who are the feed producers. It's probably, I don't know whether it's corn-based, probably not animal-based. I don't really know. And that again, that provides economy of scale. There can be businesses devoted explicitly to that who can source things in large quantities and make it. In my own thinking around trying to make smaller scale activities and devices, my focus on biogas has to do with using the waste that you generate in your house, explicitly kitchen waste, either from food preparation, banana peels, carrot tops, etc. Put that in the digester. Under the right conditions, in the right system, you get gas that comes off. It's like natural gas that you can use to cook with. But you also get a liquid effluent that is rich in plant nutrients. So locally, you don't have to dispose of your organic waste, in the garbage collection. And that's a problem because when it gets buried in a landfill, it generates methane, which is a greenhouse gas that's much worse than carbon dioxide. So being able to yourself reuse your food waste, again, either preparation waste or leftover food, in some kind of local circular system is what I'm focusing on in the context of biogas. And I wonder whether something similar could be used to generate the fish feed. Now, obviously, the company, the producers of this, know that they're generating something that will have the right nutritional content for the fish. Our household waste may vary in that content, may or may not have enough of what's needed.
Last week we had Jeffrey Hicks spoke about regenerative farming and composting, and how that you need to have, was it brown,
Right.
in the composting in order for it, and not have anything like grease that,
right, because you're right. So this is something I think requires a bit further study in the context of, so you have composting, which is taking that organic waste, be it garden waste, kitchen waste, and putting it in the presence of air. You have to turn the compost piles to generate a medium that both retains water, which is important for agriculture, and also has some of the plant nutrients. And there are specific ways to do that that are pretty well understood. For biogas, it's something similar. It's a little bit different. You can't, I think a lot of times for composting, they don't want meat and meat products. I think primarily because it's usually outside and you don't want to attract animals, cats, raccoons, etc. Or bones. But then, the recommendations for that I think kind of vary.
One of the questions that I had Mitchell, is with the aquaponics, is it as labor intensive as the traditional agriculture and farming, and what is the savings? I know that the fish have to constantly be monitored. So what's the yin and the yang between labor requirements in order to produce?
That's a great question. And I'll answer that. Let me touch on something that Myron said, and it's worth mentioning. So both with, I'm sorry. Can you hear me? There we go. All right. These are natural systems. I'm looking outside. There's probably a creek at the bottom of that hill. What we're doing with this aquaponic system is emulating what exists in nature. Both composting, natural digesters, aquaponic systems. These are natural systems that we're trying to replicate at commercial scale. So nature gets it right. We're trying to figure out a way to create or replicate that environment under controlled conditions with the right inputs, with the right outputs, but effectively using nature as a model. So that's really the impetus for what we're doing, and I think figuring out a way to take that to scale is going to be key. In answering that question, I forgot your actual question, so I apologize.
That's okay. I was asking about the labor intensity.
So, great question. So our facility will be initially an acre under roof, and I think, call it day one, we'll probably have 4 to 5 folks that are operating that farm at different scales and with different tasks. So in terms of a traditional farm, an acre farm, a dirt farm, if you will, it would be much less labor intensive. It's much more capital intensive on the front end, so I do want to acknowledge that. But it's much more a laboratory environment than it is a traditional agricultural or farm environment. But there is no diesel expenditure. There is no, outside of evaporation, you're not using water in the same manner. So I think there's a lot less demand on our resources, which are already becoming constrained. And I would use our labor and time as also a resource. So we're able to use that effectively with the implementation of certain systems to help monitor pH levels, oxygen levels, et cetera, because we're going to be using tilapia. So it's a pretty resilient fish. I think it can operate in a 40 to maybe 90 degree water or so. Some fish species can't. So yeah, you have to keep an eye on it and make sure the pot doesn't boil over, but it's not a continuous monitoring situation where somebody has to walk around from vat to vat and make sure that the fish are sustainable and living.
I have a question for Myron. What do you say to people that say tilapia is not a real fish?
It's got fins, it's got scales, it's a fish. And again, there's a lot of things about what's natural and what's unnatural, right? Everything that's around is natural. Tilapia is a fish descended from Egyptian mouth breeders, a species of African or originated fish in the highlands of Tanzania, somewhere there. And it's just been propagated and spread around the world. It's a real fish. Maybe it's possible that different kinds of animals will accumulate toxins at a different level, but nutritionally they're fundamentally the same, at least from my biochemical perspective.
Kim has a question.
Yes. It is a fish, yes. Yes.
There's been a lot of debate going on whether tilapia was a fish, and I knew Myron would have the answer, so I wanted to just take this opportunity while I was at the top of my thought. Do any of you have any questions before we go on? I'd like to be able to make sure that we, Miss Anderson, lady with a hammer, Cascade Fence Company.
We're gonna make sure that I'm reading that, because there is genetically modified tilapia. So
Sure.
there will not be no genetic modified tilapia with the real tilapia. But what has been found is that genetic modified takes over and eats the real tilapia.
I'm trying to, well, I'm trying to.
That might be more of a Myron question.
Well, true, and I'm trying to make sure I extract the question. Sure, we would, and the operation.
Can you repeat the question so they could?
So, let me, is the question, would we have genetically modified fish?
The question is, we hope and pray that we do not have genetically modified tilapia, because they
Correct.
will take over and eat the real tilapia.
Correct.
And we as humans don't know right now what we are really eating.
Correct. And what we put in our bodies is paramount. So without question. And yesterday morning I woke up, to be honest, saying that we would be using tilapia in our system. I went to bed last night with the knowledge that we may be using a fish called barramundi, which is now being bred in Arizona for the first time. So some of the fish, let me say this diplomatically. The plants really don't care that much in terms of what fish is being used. Shrimp, eel, trout, tilapia, different cultures, frankly, have different systems and different fish. So it's really, because there is a byproduct of protein of fish that comes with the system, what is the market locally for that? So I think that in some cases is going to drive what's actually generating the waste. We may end up using a barramundi system. I couldn't tell you what a barramundi looks like, but I'm going to go look it up and let you know. But yeah, I think to your question, what feed goes into the fish, what fish goes into the vat, and what waste comes out of the fish, all of that entire stream, that entire ecosystem is crucial.
Okay, I'm gonna let Myron handle this. I could answer the question, but I don't want to overwhelm y'all,
That's right.
so I'm just passing.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to try to avoid getting on a soapbox here.
No, get on the soapbox.
And
That's what
I
we're
know
here
my
for.
opinion is probably unpopular with a lot of folks, okay? Have any of you seen a wild cow wandering around in the forest anywhere? A wild cow, wild cattle. Right. If you let a cow loose, do you think it would survive out in the woods? Probably not, because we have bred these animals from some ancestor to be pretty docile, you know, to have a lot of meat, to give a lot of milk, right? We've been doing that for thousands, tens of thousands of years, maybe thousands of years anyway. So they're genetically modified by the fact that we have bred them. We've taken specific individuals and crossed them with each other to get the traits that we want. The same way, you know, broccoli, cabbage, Brussels sprouts, collard greens, they're all the same plant. We've just bred them to have exaggerated leaves, exaggerated buds, right? That's all genetic modification, but it's been done by humans over hundreds or thousands of years by selecting the ones that we like, because there's variation in nature, and genetically modifying them just by selecting the ones that we're breeding. Now, when we talk about GMOs, we're usually talking about a different kind of technology to introduce a gene or two into an organism. I was not aware that there are any genetically modified tilapia. The only fish that I know of for which there's been a genetic, because you have to have a better understanding. When you're doing a breeding cross, you simply look at the traits that you see, mix and put them together and hope that what you get out will be better. And some of it will be better and some of it will be worse. When we're talking about GMOs, we're talking about typically taking a single gene or two whose function we know from some source and introducing it to something that's already agronomically useful. The only genetically modified fish that I'm aware of are, I don't know whether it's salmon or trout, where a gene that makes a growth hormone from something else in the same family, so it may be a trout gene that's introduced into salmon or a salmon gene introduced into trout that makes them grow faster, right? So if this, I don't know whether that's understood for tilapia, because for each organism you have to understand its biology and what gene will do what, right? But there's nothing, I mean, the method of gene introduction is artificial, but they're living things like other living things. They're just a little bit different, okay? So that's a piece of my soapbox. So this fuss about GMOs being problematic, there are reasons it's problematic, but those reasons are legal and financial. Because if a company does a genetic modification and they own that variety, then you have to pay them. You have to buy it from them, right? Biologically, there's not normally a problem. Because again, there are only, the number of crops, the number of plants or animals that have been genetically modified is actually quite small. Maybe a dozen, okay, with different types. So corn, soybean, canola, but there's no genetically modified mangoes out there. There's no genetically modified, the potatoes are, some can be. But most of what we have in the market is not actually genetically modified by the criterion of introducing a gene. They're bred in different ways. So people talk about seedless watermelons being GMO. No, they're just watermelons that have been prevented from being fertilized in the field. You take an ordinary watermelon, there's some breeding that's gone on historically, but you just prevent the pollen from getting on there so they don't generate seeds. There's a lot of things that we have done by traditional methods, either traditional breeding or cultivation methods, that make things seem different. But most things that people think of as GMO are not GMO. And even the things that are GMO, its impact on human health or animal health is not very clear. So like I say, I know that's an unpopular position for some folks. To me, the problem is about capital, it's about legal rights, and who owns the stuff, and why they're doing it, okay? And the other category that's common in GMOs are, I don't know if you've heard of Roundup Ready, corn, or whatever else. Roundup is a herbicide that kills most plants, right? But the idea is that they've introduced a gene that prevents the plants from being killed by Roundup, and therefore you can use Roundup on those fields and not worry about your crop plant being killed. So the problem there is not the genetic modification, the problem is the use of the herbicide, which is part of the package. If you're growing Roundup Ready corn, you don't have to use Roundup. But the advantage of that corn is that you can use Roundup and get better yields for lower inputs. So anyway, I'm going to stop there.
I could have told y'all all of that too, but I just decided to let.
There was a question.
I didn't want to ruin it.
Yeah, exactly. I don't want to let Myron go ahead. Mr. Thomas?
It seems like a lot of meaning in the definitions are being we have invasive species that have entered ecosystems since the beginning of time. The carbon Michigan, if you put a wild pig with breed them with wild hogs, they're going to turn into wild pigs. And the tilapia part, I was just in the farmer's market, and I didn't know, I saw what fresh tilapia looked like, and I had to buy some because they're a big fish. These pinkish color, whatever. So it's just, I think, it's just the meanings and the definitions of GMO. And I think another word, food sources, farm raised. So when you think of farm raised, you think of it's very interesting conversation. I think you just need somebody to come and really break down the definitions and the meanings and how all of this kind of factors.
I could do that, but I'm gonna go ahead and let Myron have that back.
No, again, my rant at the moment
Can
is
you repeat
finished.
the question so they can hear it?
Okay, yeah, so I think you were saying that, well, actually, maybe you can repeat the question, because I was sort of
The wheel was
listening
spinning.
and then I'm blanking.
The question, I was just saying there's a lot of different
Definitions, yeah.
words, and if that can kind of be broken down, or I guess not here over time, you can get a better understanding of the whole ecosystem of what aquaponics is.
So the question was the definition between GMOs, farm raised, and all the different labels
yeah.
that people use, organic, certified, all the different things that people get. There's a lot of miseducation and misnomers, and that is kind of what Myron referred to. Again, I can answer all of those questions. However, I'm going to go ahead and let Myron shine a little bit today.
Okay, yeah, so if you think about something like salmon, right? Wild caught, farm raised. Wild caught means you go out in the ocean with a boat and you either throw out a line or scoop them up with a net, right? They're living in the wild and you go and catch them. Same way you go and, shoot a deer, right, to get venison. That's wild caught, wild raised. Farmed means that you dig a pond, you supply the fish into the pond, and you typically will supply some kind of feed. It's the same fish. Now, it's probably descendants of a smaller number of fish, so the genetic diversity is going to be smaller, right? But it has to do with how you're growing them, not what their background is. So that tends to be more efficient than going on a boat and hoping you catch some fish, right? If you've got them in a pond, you know that they're there, but different kinds of fish. I don't know if anyone's ever had aquarium fish. Aquarium fish, an aquarium in the house. There's some fish you put in the tank, you can't kill them because they'll just thrive under those conditions, right? There are others, you buy the fish today, tomorrow it's dead, right? The same kind of thing in terms of farming. There are some fish that it's really difficult to keep alive under those cultivating conditions, right? Unless you supply it. You don't even know everything that they need. So tilapia, catfish, I've never heard this barramundi. These are fish that we know, and salmon as well, that we know what they need to grow and thrive. Most other fish we don't know, okay? So as far as how they're raised, either they're wild caught or farm raised. And again, that has nothing to do with genetic modification. Now, if they are farm raised, then you can specifically introduce a particular genotype, a particular variety, and they will be contained, hopefully, in the area where you're farming them. So in the context of the GMO salmon, they would be farm raised because the idea is that they're in pens somewhere and they're not getting out into the ocean, escaping, where they would cause the kind of potential trouble. If they outgrow the natural salmon, they'll outcompete them and kill them off. Some of the legitimate concern about GMOs is that even though we may say we're containing them in a certain area, sometimes they can escape, right? With respect to some of the Roundup Ready and GMO corn and so forth, the idea is that because it's harder if you're farming on land to contain them, you can say you're going to have them in this plot, right? But bees come and go and can carry pollen from a GMO plant to somebody else's field. And now they're contaminated with that GMO gene, and now the company owns them, even though the person who's growing it had no dealings with it, right? That's a biological problem, but it's the legal dimension that's the problem. It's not, so most of we don't eat that. There are millions of different species of animals and plants in the world. We eat maybe 2 or 3 dozen, right? And That's because we found, plants don't want to be eaten. They usually produce something that prevents them from being eaten, some kind of toxin, right? We have found, again, because there's variation in natural population, we have found varieties of corn that don't produce much toxin, or tomatoes. And we grow those, and over centuries, millennia, have bred out the production of toxin and increased the production of things that we want, starch, whatever else. So the reason we have such a small number of the natural varieties out there is because it's better for us. And again, you don't have to use laboratory methods to create those. We select, if you like one type, then you take that and you take the pollen from that, or you allow that to grow and you propagate it. So there's a book by a guy called Michael Pollard, who talks about the botany of desire and how the plants have actually used us to become more abundant, right? Potatoes use us there are more potatoes grown than any of its wild relatives because we like that they have these big fleshy tubers that we eat, right? So even though they're being bred by us and harvested by us, it's to their advantage. Their population is increasing. Anyway, I'm going off on tangent. But so farm-raised, wild-caught, most crops that we deal with are bred, again, over century and millennia. But we don't think about those as GMO, even though they have been just over a long period of time. But then usually the term GMO is referring to the laboratory-based introduction of a specific gene or two. We don't know how to introduce more than 3 or 4 genes at a time. As opposed to the tens of thousands of genes in the organism itself, we're only changing 1 or 2 genes, which can either provide an insecticidal protein or resistance to a particular herbicide. Those are the 2 big ones in terms of plants. But they provide advantage to cultivation. So yes, I agree completely that the definitions are important and that discussion is absolutely vital. I am fundamentally pro-GMO in terms of what it's possible to do with it. I have problems with what has been done. One more.
I want you to shine,
Yeah.
so I'm gonna let you go ahead.
So most of that development, it took years, decades, not centuries, right? That where companies like Monsanto invested in paying people, developing these products, and at the end of the cycle, they have something that they've invested money in, they want to make money in, right? So they continue to own it, et cetera, et cetera. There's something called golden rice that was developed with some assistance from some of the companies, but mostly at an international institute called the CGIAR, Consultative Group on International Agriculture, that was engineered to produce high levels of beta-carotene. Beta-carotene is the orange, red, yellow substance in carrots. It is a precursor to vitamin A. And it was developed because specifically in Asia, a lot of children, poor children, would have rice to eat, but nothing else, right? So they were becoming vitamin A deficient and suffering disease as a consequence. Golden rice was developed to provide high levels of that vitamin A precursor for poor children. Do you know who's growing golden rice right now? No one. Because of the popular sentiment against GMOs. There's no profit in it for any company, but because that idea has been demonized, no one's willing to, I could be wrong, maybe there's some little government somewhere in Bhutan or someplace that might be doing it, but the benefit, again, it was produced through public investment, not private investment, for poor people, but it's not been used because there's this stigma against it. So yes, I agree completely that this needs to be a discussion. But it's easier to demonize something than it is to uplift it with the challenges. So part two of the rant is over.
Thank you for that, Myron. Again, I wanted you to shine because I could have shed a lot of light on that myself. But anyway, I think it's really interesting that you talk about the golden rice and that it was developed publicly for poor people, and because it's not being able to be monetized or hasn't been monetized, it hasn't been really promoted. And so, again, we get back to public trust and what's best for the people, and these are the things that we are interested in pursuing and advocating for. I know you spend quite a bit of time in Africa, and this is a question that I have for you and Mitchell, is that when I've been able to travel internationally, and you and I spent some time in Ghana together, the quality and the taste of the fruits and the vegetables and even the seafood that was coming out of the ocean tastes vastly different than what we buy out of the store here. And I wanted you to speak to that. Does that have to do with the GMOs? And then also, Mitchell, I wanted you to speak to it in the aquaponics space. What will the taste be like? Because the taste is kind of the same, but it's a little bit different when I travel internationally. So I'm gonna start here to since we're gonna give him a little break, let him rest up before he.
No, that's fair. Let me say one thing. So I learned yesterday, and I'm going to put my own bias on this. So if I go to a restaurant and on a menu there's farm raised versus wild caught, 9 times out of 10 I'm going wild caught. That's how I operate. But I learned yesterday that in Canada, as a result of I think uranium mining, that all of the trout, all the wild trout in Canada are considered toxic. So if you order and eat a trout in Canada, it is a farm-raised trout. So I'm not saying right or wrong, I'm just saying that there is some misconceptions around certain things, certain monikers, and I think to validate your point, I think it's important to get those definitions out in the open and get them right. In terms of taste, no doubt. Yesterday, when I was at the conference in Athens, my kid went to a local farm and picked strawberries, and I had some last night, and they're the best strawberries I've ever had in my life. And I haven't seen anything that looked like them at the grocery store, even though you go to the organic section and they look good, but they still don't have the same flavor profile and color and characteristics. So
What color were they?
they were red, but they were the deepest red that I've ever seen, and the texture was everything about them was different. And maybe I wanted it to be different, so I'll acknowledge that, but they are different. And so I think how we care for these plants, these fish, affects the ultimate taste and frankly the nutritional qualities. So I think what's happened a lot with commercial farming is, and particularly in commodity markets, is a gear towards, or at least a slant towards, harvest and production and less on nutritional quality, organics, et cetera. So I think as the world becomes more aware of these issues, and I think a mantra that I use is a problem stated is a problem solved. So let's state that problem. The stuff we're putting in our bodies is not great. Let's fix that. And one of the ways to fix that is to get back to some of these heirloom quality seeds, et cetera. So Myron, you want to talk a little bit?
Sure you don't want me to answer that, Mike?
You can.
No, I'm going to go ahead.
Okay. And I very much appreciate what he said, is that, and this in my mind partly goes to scale. Given a choice, if you can eat locally grown food that comes from somewhere near you, that's probably going to be better. And that's going to be generally the case in Africa and many places in the world that don't have as long a supply chain.
That's right.
There are no banana farms in the United States, right? Yet you've never been to the supermarket and not seen bananas because they're grown thousands of miles away, and they're grown to a state where they will ship. First of all, the varieties that are used have these properties of being able to harvest them before they're ripe, before the plant has put everything in it that it intends to, right? So that they can then be shipped. And then once they get here, it may expose them to ethylene or something that causes them to begin to ripen. Same thing for tomatoes, right? And actually, the first genetically modified tomato that was tried to put on the market was something called the flavor saver. It failed miserably. Tomatoes, in the same kind of way, varieties that are mostly, agronomically available, they're harvested before they're ripe because they're not soft, right? So that you can pack them together and ship them hundreds, thousands of miles, and then they're ripened in the store and don't have much flavor. The reason they get soft is because of some enzymes that break down the pectin. So the flavor saver was made to reduce the expression of those enzymes, right? And the tomatoes that were produced from that, which were genetically modified by the thing of introducing a foreign gene, tasted better. But they were more expensive because the company needed to get paid for their investment, and that was the beginning of the backlash against GMOs as an idea. So the idea of trying to get things that don't have to be in a long supply chain, right? Are not coming from tens of thousands of miles away, which takes energy. It means that they're under governments that you have no control over. We may have child labor or low-cost labor.
Yeah, we're about to have child labor here.
Yeah, so that's so yeah. But the likelihood is they're going to taste better because they will have the full complement of flavor molecules that the plant generates. Because I talk about plants don't want to be eaten, but they do want their fruit to be taken and spread around, right? So they'll produce stuff that makes them appealing to birds, animals like us to carry their seeds, right? So the closer you can get to where you are and where things are produced, in general, the better that's probably going to be for flavor. I'm not sure about the nutrition and health piece, but you may know that no pesticides or herbicides have been used. But odds are they're going to be more expensive. Similarly with organically grown stuff, right? It's easier and cheaper to spray a giant, 10-acre field with something that's going to kill the insects, right? If you're doing it organically, then the insects are going to be there and they'll make the fruit look ugly, right? And we don't like that. We like nice red tomatoes with no scars or whatever else on them. So, so local growth helps. And you're reducing the transportation infrastructure, the energy spent on bringing things across. But again, I think as we're going to be learning with these tariffs, the supply chain for the world is now completely international. And the prices we pay for things, the availability of stuff, is due in part to the fact that this, and not just food, obviously, all kinds of goods. But in terms of that international, I worry a little bit about, and I don't think it's a GMO issue. It has to do with the cultivation issue and with diversity. Different.
Can't use diversity anymore.
I'm sorry. Yeah. A Roma tomato is not the same as a cherry tomato, even though they're all the same species, right? But they're cultivated to be one type. And in other places in the world, and again, because the industry is big, everyone grows the same types. In other places in the world, you have, and that's where they refer to heirloom, the idea that this is what we've been growing here, or something like it, and it's mixed genetically, as opposed to the uniformity that we like, or that the market likes, because we know what you're going to get, right? And you know what it's going to taste like. But oftentimes that comes with maybe diminished flavor. And again, I don't think nutritional quality is a real issue. To me, the problem has to do with things that may cause problems that we may or may not be aware of. Again, herbicides, pesticides, even some of the naturally produced molecules in the plant. You know, again, they're things that will kill us.
Okay, what do you think? What do you think about my rural development, farm to table, mixed use development with the farm manager idea?
I think that is, and so that goes to economic structures, right? Where the land is, who's working it, what they're getting paid for, what they're getting compensated with. I think that's really important to revise and to engage in. You know, again, one of the problems with what's going to happen with these tariffs is if we have things that are American grown, Americans make higher salaries than most of the world. That means that if you have somebody locally doing the work, it's going to cost more. And we have to be willing to do that. But finding an economic model where the land acquisition and valuation is appropriate, where the skill set of the people working it and a decent wage is supported, and where the market will also respond to that. That's really important. And I don't have enough knowledge or understanding of how all that economics work to be able to comment apart from, yes, it's a good thing.
Thank you. You had a question.
Yes, I was wondering, how is the community going to be involved in the aquaponics facility?
I will let Mitchell answer that, but one of the things that he did talk about was the scalability and how you could do something the size of this table. But I think that that's an opportunity for it to be able to scale, and because of the regenerative nature of it, you'll be able to not only impact your own personal food supply, but you'll be able to impact your community food supply and selling locally at a reasonable cost, increasing food security. Mitchell.
So these systems don't function without appropriately trained personnel to run them. So one of the reasons I was at the conference yesterday at the University of Georgia, and my counterpart, the farm designer, was there, is to galvanize and to build support for personnel, kids wanting to get into this industry. So regarding the community, look, in Athens, I think there are 4 aquaponics facilities at elementary, middle, and high schools. We have had conversations with Clayton County School System, the TCSG, the Technical College System of Georgia, as well as Georgia Tech's Research Institute, and then the University of Georgia. So getting students involved at all levels, at all ages, involved and interested about farming, because I don't know if we put all the options on the table that somebody's going to go out and pick farming. So I think that's one area, one issue that we're going to have to solve. In terms of this facility and its outreach to the community, certainly the Andrew Young Foundation is a communal organization in terms of its impact and its footprint and its mission here in Atlanta and internationally. So the Food Science and Innovation Center that will ultimately be housed at the facility off of Mount Zion Road will be set up to bring in outside participants in the community and to get them involved and exposed and engaged in the product that we're building, the project that we're building. So it will be community driven, but it's not a community farm in the sense that you might have propped up outside. It has a different purpose, and it is a controlled environment. So kind of understanding and seeing that firsthand is going to be key in order to take that knowledge and take that interest back into the school systems, into the communities, and figuring out ways to develop these and to scale them. Like I said, at a desktop level or at a mega farm scale. Yes, ma'am. I think my counterpart mentioned hydroponics. So we are going to be an aquaponics facility. So it's a fish-based closed loop system. There will not be a hydroponic component to it, even though to the outside eye they look similar. But we have a fish and a fish waste component that provides the fertilizer. By definition, hydroponic systems are not organic because you're introducing some sort of fertilizer or food to the plant, where in our case the food for the produce is the fish waste. So it's a closed loop system. So it's just they're similar, they're cousins, if you will, but there's a few distinct differences.
And as far as to Mitchell's point, getting the kids involved, last week we had our session on careers in farming and appraising. Those are the two least diverse professions in the country. And part of what we're doing in our Outside the Barn series is trying to educate the next generation, because those numbers are so small. In 1920, there was 1 million black farmers. Today, there's less than 30,000. So we are trying to introduce the kids to it and the different opportunities in it. I teach an entrepreneurial class at Best Academy, and they've just got a grant to get 2 high tunnels to start doing some farming and agricultural type projects. We had a couple weeks back, I went to go see Kendall Ray Johnson. She's the youngest certified farmer in the country, 9 years old, and she has a USDA farm number, and they have a small urban farm in Decatur. So there's several small, younger folks in the ag space that we will be trying to highlight and educate with the opportunities to be able to get back to the community. It's extremely important. Ma'am?
My name is Dolores Davis, and I am a master gardener. I have been involved in projects because as an educator, I saw so many kids that were obese, and the quality of their life really changed because of their size.
Sure.
So I retired, and I started working, volunteering in preschool. My whole goal was to teach kids what real food tastes like, so that when they began to make choices on what they like, not only did they could identify what they like, but they had the vocabulary to say, I like things that are spicy. I don't like things that are tart. Those words being introduced at a preschool level. I worked with a teacher. She took that same concept throughout her curriculum. When those kids left there, they knew how to grow strawberries. They knew what broccolini was. They knew what carrots really taste like. They knew the different kinds of apples. This is what we have to do to start the conversation, start teaching on the preschool, elementary level, what food really tastes like. But so many of our youth, they grab a bag and they think that's real food, but it's not real food. It's modified. I need a conversation with you about the GMOs, because I'm also a health coach. And I've been teaching how to impact the nutrients in our food so that our bodies can get what it needs in order to have the energy to get out and move around so we won't be obese. So this conversation that you're having here today is so very important to changing the minds of people to aquaponics, to understand that we can do things here in this country to improve our currency. So continue the conversation. I encourage you, get in the schools. There are some teachers there. I got my certification before I retired because I had teachers in my building that wanted to do a garden, but they needed an administrator.
So, Ms. Davis, this is what the whole Outside the Barn series is all about, to change the thinking and to change what we're talking about. And to Mr. Thomas's point, the definition, so you kind of piggybacked on that to get some clarity and to bring the conversation, to bring the exposure. Again, outside the barn is a play on thinking outside of the box and bringing it back to the farming and food security. So thank you for that comment, and that's what we are here for, and what the whole goal is, to be able to impact through agriculture. And for me, it's always appraising and valuation and bringing those together. So I definitely want to continue to let Myron shine. I would answer all your nutritional questions, but because we have Myron here, I don't want to hog the microphone.
Well, yeah, okay, thanks. Yeah, I'm just going to try to make a couple comments. Number one, I think the education piece, getting with people when they're young and changing their minds is really important. Historical piece, we have to understand also to change the present. I think especially for black folk in the South, agriculture was enslavement, sharecropping. Everybody wanted to get away from it. The idea of being on the land, getting dirty, all that is stuff that, especially for black folk, we have, over the past few generations, had a great disdain for it. And we need to reverse that somehow. I don't know whether that's going to be through media and TikTok or whatever else, but somehow we have to change that sense of things. And getting young people outside, engaged with stuff, I think is really, really important. We're trying to do some of that with our HBCU Green Fund at the college level, but we also want to try to engage the college students with younger people. Easier said than done, because everybody has kind of schedules and so forth. And any ideas, talk to folks that try to help engage other people in thinking about that, because we all have to eat. And the other word that, definition, a lot of people talk about natural versus unnatural, okay? That to me is not the thing. There are plenty of natural things that will kill you and make you sick. The word that they've been using a lot is ultra-processed food. It's not necessarily the origins of the crops, it's all the steps in between that have eliminated some natural stuff, added other things for preservation, etc. So that's the word of art right now that we want to try to avoid, ultra-processing. Yeah, so that was a question here.
I just want to do a plug because we hear your concerns as a master gardener, and we hear the concerns. I'm Linda Elby, I am with the Clayton County Library System, and this is what we're about, bringing the resources to the community so that we will be informed. It's a known fact, we perish for lack of knowledge. So stay tuned, because the partnership we have with these gentlemen, we are committed to making sure that we provide the resources for the community so that we can be informed. Not just here in Clayton County, but our objective is to provide information for people wherever they are. So thank you all for being here.
Thank you, Ms. Ellaby. And Ms. Davis, thank you for your comments, because not only are the kids learning about it, they're also getting exercise, being out in the garden. They're also getting less stimulation, and the kids are behaving better because of the work that they're doing in the garden. That's being used as a tool. So this was just the first step in us being able to travel the country, and we are saturating the state of Georgia and going to other places. We've had some other requests, and we're building out the schedule for the year. So I want to thank my guests for coming, Mr. Mitchell Davis and Mr. Myron Williams. I want to thank you all for coming and showing up and continuing to support us. And yes, ma'am, you had a question?
The food that's produced, is that going into our local markets here in County?
I'm less familiar with where that product's actually going to end up in terms of its ultimate shelf, if you will. It will be commercially available, yes.
It's great to have it, but if we're not gonna be able to benefit from it, then, you know, that, to me, that's a problem.
Understood, and it's a valid point, and so I think finding ways to replicate this. So let me say this: this is the first of I believe 10 that are planned in the Atlanta community. Clayton County was chosen for a very specific reason. Its proximity to the airport, proximity to the farmers market. So those are all driving factors. But I think to Thaddeus's point, you know, this is a model that we can pop up in retail establishments. I was having a conversation yesterday. They're looking at ways to implement these systems at a restaurant level. So can a restaurant have a functioning aquaponics facility to produce fish and to produce greens that are available year-round? So it would be in an environment, you know, call it a shipping container or something at that scale. So we're going to get there. This is a proof of concept, if you will, in the U.S. So I think ultimately we'll figure that out and find a way. We're in conversations now with a community in Virginia. It's a Mennonite community, so they're very communal, and they want to be able to provide the labor and reap some of the benefits from these facilities. So we're still having those conversations and ultimately figuring out how we do that.
And who would be the people that we talk to? Because I hate for this stuff to be grown here in Clinton County and nothing else for that. I mean, when you look at the health disparities here in our county,
Sure.
it's desperately needed.
Sure.
I'm an EJ person, so I'm coming from the environmental justice standard.
Gotcha.
And we need that stuff.
So, to your point, we've been traveling the country, and this is what we're advocating for to be able to do. I've been blessed to be able to meet Mitchell, to be able to get some of these concepts, but we want it to be local, but to his point, this was chosen strategically because of the global supply chain and impact. You're right in the middle of all the highways, you're right in the middle of the railways, as well as airways. So, but as we travel and try to put these concepts together from a development, environmental justice standpoint, is very important, and the scalability of it and the impact that it can have on value as well as food quality locally to be able to source. And so with that, I always like to be respectful of the time, and we are going to stop now. It is 1 o'clock, but we will still be here to answer any questions and enjoy some of this delicious food that was provided by Chef Tiffany and Lola Pecan Restaurant. And again, Deborah, I see you chewing there. I was going to give you the microphone, but I'm not going to put you on the spot. Again, I just want to say thank you to all of you all for showing up and continuous to support us. Thank you to my guests, Mr. Myron Williams and Mr. Mitchell Davis. And thank you all. You all have a great holiday weekend. Talk to you soon. Rick, that's it.